France is participating in the U.S.-led air war on ISIS targets in Syria, including targeting oil fields from which ISIS derives revenue to fund its military efforts. Complicating matters at home, the French government believes as many as 1,500 French citizens and residents have traveled to Syria and Iraq to fight with ISIS and similar jihadist groups. The Pentagon announced today the U.S. has carried out its first airstrike on ISIS in Libya yesterday, killing the senior leader of ISIS there. For more perspective on the war on ISIS and the terrorist attacks in France, I'm joined from Washington by Anthony Cordesman from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Anthony, I'm assuming, like the rest of the world that was watching what happened last night, this is a game changer for ISIS, the ability to pull off these coordinated attacks.
I think we need to be very, very careful because, as you pointed out, France has been one of our key allies in the air campaign, certainly one of the most consistent. ISIS has had weeks, perhaps months, in which to try to assemble and put together cells in France. You've had previous terrorist attacks there, as you have in other European countries. And horrifying as these casualties are, they consist essentially of attacking undefended civilian areas chosen almost at random out of all the activities in a major city. Now, ISIS did formally declare war 2 days ago as a result of the step up in the campaigns along the Kurdish area. But we shouldn't exaggerate that this is some kind of game changer. ISIS has had ties to external movements and extremist groups in Europe, probably the United States, for a long time. And this is a moment in which it has reason to try to activate these forces.
Is this a sign that it's feeling the pressure, that perhaps the attacks from the U.S., the coalition forces, maybe even parts of the Russian air campaign are affecting it?
Well, it may well be under pressure. Part of it is probably the air campaign, which we lead, again with French, Australian, British, and other participation. Part of it is that on the ground, the Kurds have made significant gains in places like Sinjar. Part of it, I think, is, quite frankly, they need demonstrative action in terms of fundraising, the kind of media-grabbing political action you get through this kind of almost random but very, very visible, bloody attack in a city like Paris. So all of these factors come together, and there are reasons why it should act now.
Does this help in their recruiting efforts to not just say, as you mentioned, a high visibility attack, but to try to figure out whoever's on the bubble in these countries and radicalize them?
Well, you raise a very good point because, yes, it sounds in some ways almost like it should be the opposite. But it is true that people who are alienated, people who already are on the edge of being willing to join a movement like ISIS, they're already going to be motivated in seeing this kind of very high-profile event. Not only leads to more volunteers, it leads people to contribute money. We're talking a very, very small margin of people. Sometimes when we talk about these numbers of volunteers, people talk about them being so high. In comparative terms, they're almost incredibly small compared to other ideological movements in their ability to attract young extremists. But they're still high enough to create the kind of nightmare we've seen in Paris.
Does this change the coalition or the West's response to ISIS to see something like this happen in a major city?
The problem is you can't suddenly defeat ISIS in Syria and Iraq in the first place. And in the second, the more you step up your military action in Syria and Iraq in the short run, the more ISIS may actually act out by triggering whatever resources it has in other countries. And there, the only thing that really counts is the counterterrorism campaign and how effective those counterterrorist forces are. And they have nothing to do with stepping up the offensive in Iraq and Syria.
All right. Anthony Cordesman joining us from Washington. Thanks so much.
Thank you.